It is June 11th and you are watching this report. Humans have been communicating across large distances for thousands of years, whether it's smoke signals, drums, or carrier pigeons. But these ancient methods pale in comparison to the advanced communication technologies we have today. From satellites to fiber optics, modern technology has allowed us to communicate instantly across the globe. But did you know that there was a time before electronics when people used hydraulic systems to send messages faster than anything that had come before? In fact, the idea of using water to transmit messages dates back thousands of years. Some of the earliest examples of hydraulic semaphores can be found in ancient Greece around the 4th century BCE. These systems used water clocks to indicate the time and were accurate to within a few seconds of the actual time. They consisted of two connected vessels, one containing black and red-colored water. As the water flowed from one vessel to the other, it would mix together to form different colors which could be used to represent different times of day. These systems were also used to send messages between two locations by using floats or levers to indicate different letters or symbols. This method was still dependent on someone physically reading the message at the other end, but it was a significant improvement over previous methods such as smoke signals or flags. During the Middle Ages, water clocks continued to be used throughout Europe and the Middle East. However, these clocks were more complex and accurate. Some water clocks even featured astronomical dials that would show the position of the sun, moon, and stars. Water clocks were not only used for telling time, but they were also used to regulate the activities of monks in monasteries. The monks would follow a strict schedule, and the water clock would ensure that they stayed on track. The clock would ring an alarm at specific times to signal the start of a new activity such as prayer or work. This helped to maintain order and discipline within the monastery. However, despite their usefulness, water clocks eventually fell out of favor during the Renaissance due to the invention of mechanical clocks. Mechanical clocks were powered by weights or springs and were more portable than water clocks. As the demand for more accurate timekeeping grew, water clocks were largely abandoned. But then in the 19th century, an Italian engineer named Giovanni Caselli revived the concept of using hydraulics for communication. His system, known as the telhygro, used water to transmit messages via a series of valves and pipes. The messages were sent from a central office where a telegraph operator would manipulate the valves to control the flow of water. The water would then flow through pipes to different stations where it would activate a mechanical device that would print out the message. Caselli's system was able to transmit messages much faster than traditional telegraph systems because it did not rely on electrical signals. Instead, it used the power of water pressure to drive the mechanical devices that printed out the messages. This eliminated the need for an operator at each station to manually crank a printer, and allowed the system to operate continuously without the risk of electrical interference. Kessler's system was first installed in Italy in 1866 and quickly expanded throughout Europe. By the end of the century, there were over 1,200 kilometers of telhygrometers in use in Italy alone, connecting major cities such as Rome, Florence, and Genoa. The system was also adopted in other countries such as France, Germany, and Austria. However, the telhygro system had its limitations. It required a network of pipes and valves, which was expensive and time-consuming to install. It was also vulnerable to leaks and breaks, which could disrupt communications. Additionally, the system was limited to sending text messages and couldn't transmit voice or data. Despite these limitations, the telhygro system was a significant innovation in the field of communication. It provided a fast, reliable, and continuous method of transmitting messages over long distances, and it paved the way for future developments in hydraulic and pneumatic communication systems. The late 19th century saw the rise of optical telegraphs, a communication system that utilized visual signals such as flashing lights to transmit messages. Unlike traditional telegraphs, which relied on electrical or hydraulic systems, optical telegraphs used mirrors, lenses, and prisms to reflect and refract light, creating signals that were visible from long distances. This innovation allowed for faster and more efficient communication across vast distances. One of the earliest forms of optical telegraphs was the heliograph, which used mirrors to reflect sunlight and create flashes of light that could be seen for miles. The heliograph was invented in the early 19th century and was initially used for military applications. Another early form of optical telegraph was the Wickman line, which consisted of a series of mirrors mounted on towers along a straight line of sight. Messages were transmitted by rotating the mirrors to reflect light onto a receiver's mirror, which would then display the message. In 1837, Claude Pouillet, a French astronomer and physicist, built an optical telegraph that used a rotating disc with 24 segments, each painted a different color. The disc was placed in front of a bright light source, and by rotating the disc, different colored lights could be produced. Pouillet's telegraph was an improvement over previous optical telegraphs because it could transmit a wider range of messages. In addition to its ability to transmit messages over long distances, the optical telegraph was also advantageous because it did not require wires or cables. This eliminated the expense and logistical challenges associated with installing and maintaining a wired communication system, making it a cost-effective solution for long-distance communication. Furthermore, the optical telegraph was immune to electrical interference, which was a common problem with wired telegraph systems. This made it a reliable option for transmitting important or sensitive information. Moreover, the optical telegraph was a passive system, meaning that it did not require any power source other than the natural light from the sun or a bright lamp. This made it a sustainable and eco-friendly option compared to other communication systems that relied on electricity or fuel. However, despite its advantages, the optical telegraph had some drawbacks. It was limited to line-of-sight communication, which meant that it could not be used to communicate around obstacles such as mountains or buildings. Additionally, the system was susceptible to weather conditions such as fog, rain, or high winds, which could obscure the signals. Despite these limitations, the optical telegraph was a significant advancement in communication technology and played a role in shaping the development of future communication systems. One of the most notable optical telegraph systems was the Claude Chapp's optical telegraph, which was developed in France in the late 18th century. This system used a series of towers equipped with rotating arms and discs to transmit messages visually over long distances. Each disc had letters or numbers painted on it, and by rotating the discs, operators could spell out messages that could be read from miles away. Claude Chapp's system was highly influential in the development of optical telegraphs and inspired similar systems in other countries. For example, the OPL, or Optique des Provinces de Liège, was a system developed in Belgium in the early 19th century that used a similar method of rotating discs to transmit messages. This system was particularly notable for its use of a unique optical device called a heliotrope, which used a rotating mirror to produce flashing light signals that could be seen over long distances. The OPL system was used extensively throughout Belgium and neighboring countries, and played a significant role in the development of optical telegraph networks in Europe. Another noteworthy optical telegraph system was the Russian optical telegraph, which was developed in the early 19th century by the Russian military engineer General A. Bose. This system used a series of optical elements such as mirrors, prisms, and lenses to transmit messages between towers. The Russian optical telegraph was notable for its use of a unique type of signal flag that could display both letters and numbers, making it more versatile than previous systems. The system was used extensively throughout Russia and other parts of the Russian Empire, playing a significant role in the military and administrative communications of the time. But while optical telegraphs were certainly an advancement in communication technology, they were eventually superseded by electronic telegraphs and telephones in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These newer technologies were faster, more reliable, and more versatile, making them more suitable for the growing demands of long-distance communication. However, the optical telegraph left a lasting legacy in the field of communication and inspired future innovations in optical technologies such as fiber optic cables. The principles of optics and light transmission that were developed for optical telegraphs continue to be used today in various optical technologies such as lasers, fiber optic communications, and optical computing. If you like this video, check out my others about World War II and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss my next video. I'll see you guys next time.